The focus for us in this particular masterclass is on you as an individual, as the entrepreneur. There's lots that's going on around what can happen to your business, for your business, but this particular masterclass takes the dive inward around exploring what's happening for you. Earlier, Tony spoke about the word crisis. Some people say a crisis, don't waste a crisis. It's both a challenge and an opportunity. For some people, coming face to face with their mortality becomes front and center. For others, it's about making sure that they have sufficient funds to pay their staff. And for others, it's acknowledging the vulnerability of usually being in control and now finding that they don't have a sense of control. So perhaps we could also continue thinking about it as we move through the next couple of slides. But lots of what's happening that's come up, certainly in some of the coaching sessions I've had and also in general conversations with people, is, I'm a type of person who might enjoy working with lots of people. Now, all of a sudden, I'm finding I'm all alone, either working from home or I'm all alone, and I'm missing the interactions with people. You also notice that you go from, I used to enjoy doing my job, and now I'm finding I'm doing so many different roles, like you're doing home school working, you're doing the cleaning, and you're doing trying to run your business. So it's pulling on and stretching people in different ways more than what they necessarily anticipated. Or the view outside your window you're noticing is that, gosh, some days are better than other days, and I'm not sure what's going on and why is that coming up for me. So I invite you just to notice what's coming up to you as well. We're going to move to, what does that mean? We've
Sorry.
spoken about,
Hi,
yes.
Marie. I thought I'd just share some of the comments that are coming through. Daniel has expressed that he's noticing very big mood fluctuations, from extreme panic and stress to acceptance and drive over and over again. So sort of going through a bit of a cycle.
Okay. Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for sharing. And it's interesting, that's, it sounds like but that's normal. And that's what most and different people are experiencing, various elements of how that's impacting themselves. And it talks to our topic today of self-awareness. Yes, Leonie?
Yes, just one more comment. We have a comment coming through from, it's either going to be Nasette or Ernest from Clay Pigeon. Would like to ask you a question online. So go ahead, guys.
Oh, uh, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Go ahead, Nasette.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Joy and Leonie. So it's not really a question, it's more of a comment. I've obviously been engaging in a lot of experts in all industries trying to kind of deal with this crisis. But a common theme that's been coming up, which I don't necessarily agree with, is this idea that an entrepreneur is always prepared. They always know the answers. They take risks. There's no such thing as, I don't know how I'm trying to be realistic about the crisis that you're facing, but also having like the motivation and I suppose the mental and emotional strength to overcome it and not give up, because it's so easy to feel like you failed.
Mm.
Does that make sense?
That's a great comment, and it talks to why self-importance, because there are perceptions about entrepreneurs, there are interpretations about what entrepreneurs are capable or not capable, but also for the entrepreneur themselves is, when you hit the choppy waters, what are you going to do, or how do you navigate through that? And part of what we're going to cover today is helping to build part of your resilience, yes, but also to understand the takeaway at the end of the day is there are lots of things that are outside of your control, but there are things that you can control yourself. And being aware of what that is helps you to navigate these particular choppy waters at the moment. We're going to have an interview with an entrepreneur shortly, Tony. At the moment, we are all in the same water. We're just in different boats. And so it's about how we help each other and how we navigate in our different boats to get through these choppy waters. So that's our superpower. I'd like
So,
to share.
Joy
So,
Marie,
yes,
I
Liz.
have one more comment coming through from
Okay.
Joanna Orr,
Yes.
based on what you as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, are currently experiencing. And I think that she is expressing something very similar to what Daniel had expressed, which is it has been a process. And to realize, as she says, how much we have been impacted and the changes that need to be made. And again, going through that cycle of days where you feel like you're capable and able to cope with some of those business changes and transitions, and other days just not coping.
Sure. That is so powerful because that's just acknowledging our humanity, that some days are going to be really good and some days are just hard. And you said the word coping is, how do we cope with all of this? And what can we do about that? And that's where you've already demonstrating through the questions that have come through in the comments, that awareness of self, and noticing that. And it's interesting, for some people, they don't notice that. Their patterns of behavior, what they see, the iceberg, the top part, is what they're doing all the time. They don't notice that what's happening around them is impacting them individually and personally, and it's showing up in how they are behaving with all the different elements. And I'm going to come to that particular part. Are there any other
Yes, so we have
comments, Leah?
one more comment from Kanye Creations and Manuela, who is expressing that she has been feeling extreme frustration with the process of coming up with completely new business strategy. So very valid.
Yeah, yeah. Unfortunately, yeah, sometimes that does mean pivoting in different directions for business because of this particular disruption that COVID's introduced into our lives. But sometimes there's the challenge, there's the opportunity, but that added, yeah, frustration of trying to navigate that space can be both emotionally and physically exhausting on entrepreneurs as well. So I'd just like to share with you the story of the frog and the tadpole. So Tadpole is swimming in a pond, and all of a sudden a frog appears in the water next to him. Where did you come from? The tadpole inquires. Somewhere dry, replies the frog. What is dry? The tadpole asks. It's when there's no water, says the frog. What is water? The frog is speechless, emphatically gesturing at the abundant substance surrounding the tadpole. He asks, Water? You mean you can't see it? No. But how can you not see it? It's all around you. So I'm sharing that story about the frog and the tadpole doesn't realize that it's in water. Much like we could ask, does a fish ever know that it's swimming in water? It knows that it's doing things, but does it ever know that it's in water? And that really, for me, illustrates self-awareness. Sometimes we don't realize what's happening to us, and other times we can become aware of actually what's happening to us. So I'm going to use this awareness and the context, and I'm using 4 different quadrants, and seeing how self-awareness helps us what we see above the line, as in the iceberg, and what we don't see, what's happening beneath the waters as well. So on your top left, so what we see is how people demonstrate their behaviors. So the behaviors of, we've spoken about perhaps mood swings, or we angry, or all of a sudden we stop, we dress in a particular way, or we remove ourselves from people, and we change our behavior. And so that impacts, that's what we can all visibly see. And then if you look on your right, what's the environment in which your business is operating? What's the environment in which you as an individual is operating in even this COVID-19 circumstance? The environment perhaps was one where you went into an office or you went into a manufacturing space and there was noise and there was people and there were clients and there were demands. And now you find yourself operating in a very different space. So how's that showing up and what's that impact for you? If we look at things that are below the line, and below the line, we're talking about things you can't necessarily see, but you know. So, for example, your relationship with your vendors or suppliers. You might think you have a great relationship with a vendor or supplier. And then come the day and you're asking them, I need some materials or I need to pay a little later. And the vendor turns around and says, supply, sorry, that's not going to work. And you're like, but I thought we had a good relationship and we had a good dynamic. Or you think you've got a great relationship with a significant other, and the other partner says, it's not such a great relationship, I'm tolerating you, and it's perhaps not the same experience. Or you might think you have a great relationship or difficult, let's talk about a difficult. You might think you have a difficult relationship with a particular staff member for some reason, but that particular staff member doesn't feel the same way and might see you as a great person to interact with. So those are the dynamics of what we don't see. It's what we've, in a sense, developed around our perceptions, our understandings, our assumptions of certain relationships as such. And then the bottom left, which is also below the line, is what we think. It's our thoughts, it's our beliefs, it's how we view the world from our experiences and our exposures. I'll use an example for when we could, now we can still walk out between 6 and 9 in the morning. But if you go for a walk, or for those of you that run and enjoy active sports, if you have a stone in your shoe, it's quite uncomfortable to continue walking or running with a stone in your shoe. And I'm not even talking about a stone the size of your fist. It could literally be the size of your small finger. It makes it very uncomfortable to walk with a stone in your shoe. And what most people do is you stop, you take the stone out, you put your shoe back on, and you continue walking. Yet, in a way, for us as individuals, we have self-limiting beliefs like a stone, and yet we keep that. It walks with us, it's part of us, we carry it with us all the time. I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I don't have all the skills, I'm not sure if I can pivot or change my business direction, or I don't understand this part of the business. So we have these self-limiting beliefs and thoughts, and unless we stop, explore them, become aware that it's limiting us or it's impacting how I view myself, how I view the world, that's going to stay with you until something shifts for you to move and to affect those thoughts and beliefs. So, what can we do about it? Well, on the screen right now, what do you see? So for some, yes, you could see a rabbit. For others, you see a duck. For some, you can see both. For some, they don't see either a rabbit or a duck, or they see the one and not the other. And that self-awareness helps you to understand that there are multiple perspectives and to understand that other people also have perspectives. And so we need to develop that self-awareness, and it's almost like a muscle that needs to be trained about how do I practice developing my self-awareness. And part of it, what you can also do is self-reflection. John Dewey said, we don't learn from an experience. We learn from reflecting on that experience. So when we take the time to reflect on an experience, that's where the richness of the experience comes out and we can learn about ourselves. And that reflection can be a moment, it can be 10 minutes, it could be an hour, it could be a day, it could be whatever you want it to be. And I would invite you, perhaps this weekend, to reflect on this particular masterclass. What was different from you? What can you take away from what you saw, listened to, read, experienced? that can help you develop your self-awareness and to start practicing that reflection to help develop that particular muscle. And if you want a really practical way to do that, who doesn't like pie? And there are so many varieties of pie, blueberry and pecan pie and pumpkin pie. And in South Africa, it's pretty much a tradition to have a pie and a Coke. And on a Friday, and today's a Friday, so it's Pie Day and Friday and all of that. But I'm driving home the point of using the word pie. And here's a quick exercise for all of us to do. Think of the letters P-I-E. So here's a check-in that you can do for yourself. You can do it once a day, 10 times a day, once a week. The P stands for physical. Do a check. How am I feeling physically? It's like doing a body scan. Do I notice any tension in my neck or my shoulders because I'm hunched over a computer? Am I noticing any warmth or sensation in any parts of my body? So just notice that physically. Again, if you did that in the morning, it might be very different after a good night's rest. If you checked in late in the evening, you might have a different, notice different things about yourself physically, or even during the day. The I stands for intellectually or mentally. So notice how you are feeling intellectually. Gee whiz, at this particular moment, it's 11:33. I'm perhaps being intellectually stimulated more than I planned, or actually I'm noticing that this is quite boring. It's not really interesting. So I'm just noticing that. If, say, tomorrow you have a difficult conversation or you're needing to prepare for something that's happening on Monday, when you do the check-in, again, notice intellectually what's happening for me. And then the E, emotions. Interesting. What emotions coming up for you? Now, for some people, emotions are easy. They can describe, I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm glad, I'm contemplative, I'm moody. And for others, emotions are a bit challenging to describe and to note. But again, like a pie, if you check in with yourself, how am I feeling right now physically? How am I feeling right now intellectually? And how am I feeling now emotionally? It gives you a sense of self-awareness of what's happening. And what's interesting, if you check in using that pie in the morning and after a very difficult conversation, or even after a very good conversation, or one that's like a great conversation, notice how those shifts happen of your awareness of self. Okay, we're going to segue now into resilience. The same water that softens the potato hardens the egg. It's not about the circumstances, but rather what you're made of. And if ever now, to the question earlier, I think it was from Clay Pigeon around, how people view entrepreneurs around what's happening, the hot water that for some is going to soften us and for others harden. It's not your outlook, it's just how the water and those circumstances shift and make a difference for all of us. For the next section now, we spoke about we are all in the same water. COVID has impacted everyone, but we are in boats. So what does that mean for resilience for the entrepreneur? And for this, I'm going to have an interview with an entrepreneur, Tony, just around how the self-awareness as an entrepreneur has been engaged in these kinds of difficult times or during a crisis. So Tony, as a serial entrepreneur and having been an entrepreneur for a number of years, how can self-awareness help you cope during a crisis?
Thank you, Joy Marie. In my particular case, I think the situation which is about as close to this kind of crisis that I've been in was in dealing with the liquidation of a business. And the range of emotions that you go through from disappointment in yourself, anger at others, frustration at getting things done, or even the orderly winding up of such a business, I think required a lot of self-reflection in terms of dealing with how you bounce back from such an experience. And that's on the one extreme. On the other extreme, in dealing with being able to build a business and be able to sell it to somebody, also engages you in ways to understand yourself and try and use that in terms of looking at the structure of your business and how your business is run. So the entrepreneurs themselves, the comments that came through were so good about feeling a failure if you aren't, as an entrepreneur, succeeding all the time. For me, the self-awareness and the reflection that I got was that actually entrepreneurship is more about failing all the time and succeeding sometimes, but then succeeding greatly. And it's something that I can hold on to say that as long as I keep trying to succeed, and even if I am failing on that path, the next one will be the success that I'm looking for. Which talks to the way people started their entrepreneurial journey in most cases, not knowing what the future holds, not being ready for every situation that comes along. When I look back at my entrepreneurial journey, what I realize is that the pivotal points that took me up or down in that journey weren't planned, weren't written into a business model. They came about by being prepared and open to new things. So that's the kind of insight that I've gained, and by checking in with myself, helped me to get to what I've been able to do so far. Thank you.
So thank you. That's quite interesting when you spoke also about, failing all the time, but then succeeding greatly, and being aware of it. But in times when it's just so uncertain about, there's regulations and there's rules and you're not certain whether you can get enough supplies. How do you make decisions during a crisis when you're not certain about what's going to happen?
That's a great question. It's a type of thinking where making decision making under uncertainty has been spoken about, but not that often. And the focus of most business people and entrepreneurs is to control the future and to plan and draw up models and forecasts that allow you to cope with that future. However, the world doesn't work like that. Life doesn't work that way. Things happen, things that aren't planned. And being able to cope with making a decision under uncertainty requires certain skills, one of them being self-awareness. The other one being able to know that knowing everything doesn't make for a better decision. Knowing enough makes for a decision. The analogy I use is that when a train or a car comes rushing towards you and about to knock you over, you don't need to know the model, the make, the number plate, and the speed of this vehicle coming towards you. You know that you have to jump. And that's often what I find is that, especially with the information that we are overloaded with, you are given so much information, yet in distilling that and looking again below the surface of the iceberg, that helps you to make decisions which aren't specific, but they are the fundamental decisions. And I think COVID has made everybody realize that the business fundamentals that people like the CDI speak about are actually really important. At the time when things are going well, it doesn't seem that way, but the fundamentals, having reserves, making sure that you have a plan B, those kinds of things are what are the important decisions that need to be made that people often don't look at. So yes, decision making under uncertainty is hard and it's frustrating. You don't know what business model you need to come up with. What you can do, though, is put yourself in a position to be able to cope with things as they develop without knowing specifically how that's going to happen. I know it's a tough ask, but that's how I look at it at the moment.
Mm-hmm. It sounds then, becoming comfortable with being uncomfortable in making some of those decisions. So how have you found resilience as a leadership quality for an entrepreneur?
Yeah, well, I think the definition of resilience is almost why, or is the starting point for any entrepreneurial journey, because entrepreneurs try and either overcome obstacles, get around them, get under them, find ways. That is the archetype of the entrepreneur. And being resilient is about taking the knocks and getting back up and starting all over again. saying it glibly seems easy, but yes, the knocks hurt. The knocks are emotionally taxing, because you've got to accept that it's not about you as a person that it's happening to, but it's on behalf of this business, this baby that you've created, and hopefully you want to grow and nurture. So yes, being resilient is imperative on a daily basis. If things were going swimmingly in business, there are still things that entrepreneurs have to deal with: difficult suppliers, difficult customers, all those kinds of things. But especially now, and I think it goes now to the core of who we are as people, that we need to dig deep to get that resilience, to be able to move forward, to get up again, to show up, and to continue the journey.
Sure. Thank you so much. I've got a couple more questions, but I think what we've both shared, certainly you've spoken about, is not you personally. It's happening to everyone, and navigating and exploring how you get up, show up, and continue with it is the resilience you're talking to. On the next slide, Tony and I have put together sort of 8 practical tips that we would just like to take you all through around how do we build that self-awareness, and that can help you be more resilient during these times.
I'll start off. The one that I think entrepreneurs know quite a bit about is the balancing as a skill. And in this particular case, you need to balance various things, your stakeholders. I saw a comment about the frustration of dealing with government. These are things that are part of the entrepreneurial journey, but it's a skill that you need to develop. And one part of that skill is balancing yourself into the equation. Often you're thinking about everybody else that is impacted by your business, but yourself and the people behind you, you need to keep all that in balance. So again, Joy Marie's use of PI, your physical, your intellectual, your emotional, keep that in mind as you're balancing and juggling these balls to try and keep things on track.
The next one I would pick on is networking. Networking during this particular time is also quite critical, because for some people it may require a shift in direction of their business, and so accessing new networks will become critical. Opportunities that the CDI have presented with these masterclasses, with having access to other service providers, will be critical for all of us during this time. So nurture your network, create new networks, and continue building that network as well. So I would put networking as a tip.
The next one I'd consider to be important is the be intentional tip, which looks at the boat in the background over there and deciding what it is you need to do. It links back to what I've said earlier about too much information, focusing on too many things. I think, yes, it was Steve Jobs who said that to be focused and to be creative requires saying no to 1,000 things. And in this particular scenario that we're sitting in, knowing what to focus on is a very important skill, and being intentional in focusing on the things that are important, as opposed to the peripheral things that tend to affect our emotions and affect our way of viewing the situation that we're in. So being intentional as an entrepreneur is a useful skill to have.
Another one is to remember to refresh, to recharge in order to excel. Right now, there are lots of things coming at you, demands, requests. You perhaps in a home or an environment or in an apartment where there's a lot going on. So it's important to be aware of yourself and how that's showing up. Some of you indicated there's moods, there's that frustration, there's how do I cope? So when you're noticing that happening to yourself, is to say, whew, stop. I'm noticing this happening to me right now. And then that's when you're aware of it. You can make a choice about your following actions. Wow, I need to take a time out now. Even if it's 5 minutes, I'm going to go stand in a garden, or I'm going to go into a closed room and just time out in a sense. Because part of it is noticing that you yourself need to be refreshed as an individual. You need to show up as the best you, in a sense, to be the entrepreneur you want to be. And that requires the awareness of when everything is getting a bit too much to say, I'm noticing it and I'm going to do something about it. So refresh, recharge, and then you will excel.
I'd like to then look at the role of mentors in supporting entrepreneurs. I think there's this perceived loneliness of the entrepreneurial journey, and some of the frustration that people have expressed in trying to deal with it on your own is taxing. And it helps when you can speak to people who've had some experience similar, never the same to yours, but at least can understand what you're going through. And I think that mentoring with people who are in business is a very valuable way of coping and of helping to see a way ahead. Different to coaching in the interpersonal sense, but mentorship around your business. And I think, again, CDI provides access to those services. And it's something that people should really take advantage of and use because that loneliness, that sense of responsibility, that the emotions that come along with running a business are very taxing, and you need help and support to keep moving forward.
Thank you, Tony. Coaching is also something that can provide immense value to you as an entrepreneur as well. Coaching is about journeying and partnering with you as you explore a particular goal that you want to then work towards, actions and how to execute. Coaching is not therapy, coaching is not counseling, but coaching, when you work with a coach, you explore what are some of those mental blockages or what are some of the challenges you're experiencing and how do I navigate that and what actions do I need to put into place for that to be made effective.
My last tip is the resilience tip. I think we've covered some of that in talking about self-awareness and how self-awareness can lead to such resilience. And if you look at Tigger, he's saying it nicely, life is not about how fast you run or how high you climb, but how well you bounce or how well you bounce back. Again, not to put pressure on people to feel that they need to be this role model that needs to bounce back just because you're an entrepreneur, but first to reflect and to be able to deal with your emotional side so that by accepting how you feel about a situation, you are able to be resilient because you've dealt with the feelings and the perspectives that are influencing how you respond.
Thank you. And then the last one is courage. It takes courage. Courage does not always require us to roar. Sometimes courage is the quiet voice at the end of the day that says, I will try again tomorrow. So we've been on a journey this morning where we've looked at the choppy waters. We understand we're in. We've looked at what do we see, what's out there that's visible. We've also reflected on what do we not see and what's happening under the water, so to speak. What was your particular view, how you've experienced it. We explored why self-awareness is important to understand the context we experience and we find ourselves in, and why resilience is critical to be able to navigate and say, how will I bounce back? And then some of the practical tips from noticing and developing that self-awareness. So the last slide we just like to leave is a picture that I took in Knysna at the time of the Knysna Lagoon. And I use this and I invite you, what is the focus of your attention? For some people, it's the marooned boat, or for others, it's the blurriness of the barrier in the front of the picture. For some, it's about why is there so little water, or perhaps that stone, or is it a turtle that's on the grass over there? Right now, being aware of self will guide you as to where your focus is. And sometimes, perhaps your focus is on the boat, but actually your focus needs to be on the water. And so I invite you this weekend when you have time to reflect on where your focus of your attention is. And then on Monday, when we go through leadership and leading with the head, heart, and gut, and understanding different leadership styles, is how do we then use our leadership style to focus on what needs to be the focus of your attention. So thank you. There's a beautiful picture I took of the seagull. As entrepreneurs, yes, you saw it's a journey that sometimes is lonely. It's a journey where you can soar to great heights, and a journey that's also fraught with many challenges and choppy waters and difficult times and opportunities. But on behalf of Tony and myself, we'd like to thank you for spending these last few minutes with us as we've journeyed together exploring self-awareness. On Monday, as I explained, we talk about how do you lead with your heart, your head, and your gut. So we hope to see you all again on Monday at 11 o'clock.